What does it mean to read your Bible theologically? Welcome to Uncolored. I'm Kevin Metcalf, and today what I'm going to do is look at something that's pretty innocuous, but I think it illustrates what I've been talking about over the last couple of videos, is that sometimes I think that when you're possessed by a particular idea, if it's a good idea, I think that you have a wider range of information to draw from when you're trying to build a worldview that accurately maps reality. But if you get off on a bad track and you are captive by an idea that's problematic, it makes you behave and talk and speak in a way that I think is also problematic and representative of the idea. Last week I used the example of a video done by Alan Parr, where he talks about this concept of double predestination, which, some people believe in it, some people don't. I don't think it matters either way. But what I hopefully illustrated in that video is that there's some problematic ways that Alan Parr just opened up with the idea that led to this narrow view of the topic, so that it would be difficult to come to a conclusion other than what I think Alan Parr has. Or, to put it differently, the problems that Alan Parr had with these issues would be the same problems anybody would have if they started with what I think is a limited, in my opinion, a view that doesn't actually represent the word properly. And so you start off sort of on a bad footing, we'll say. And so now everything you do after that is on that bad footing. Sometimes that's the problem. But there's a lot of ways that people can talk to you and give information that isn't really what they're telling you it is. And again, I don't think it's deception, because deception seems to imply that there's intent. And I don't think there's any intent involved. I certainly don't think there's any intent on Alan Parr's part to deceive anybody, not even a little bit. Same thing with Greg Koukl. I don't think that's the case at all. Again, I think that there are certain ideas that limit your ability to understand certain concepts. And when you're talking about those ideas, you can only talk about those ideas to other people in this limited way that misses so much information. And so those people who are listening to you, if they accept your premises, and those premises are bad premises, they're also going to have a hard time understanding the larger topic. And I think that happens a lot of times. Now, this is going to be something different. This is going to be a tactic that I see sometimes. When I say tactic, again, I make it sound pernicious, but again, I don't think this is an example of someone intentionally misleading anybody. Again, I'm simply saying sometimes you have this idea or some work to do, we'll say. And oftentimes these techniques are employed to get that work done. Right? So if you go out to buy a car, the salesperson you're going to talk to will employ a lot of different techniques because they want to sell you a car or a truck or whatever you're buying, which means they're going to employ some rhetorical techniques to get you in the place they want you to make that sale. Again, I don't think there's anything devious or evil about it. It's just business. And I think there might be something similar going on here. So what I'm going to do is we're just going to take a look at an article that I looked at, and it was in this Bible Tree software. That's the software that I use, is Bible Tree, when I'm referencing the Bible or looking into the Bible or reading it. That's how I look at it. And oftentimes they have, new products and things like that. And this article was associated with one of their products. And so I clicked on it and was reading it. And I was surprised to find out that it was a little different than what I had expected. So the article begins talking about reading the Bible theologically. And I thought, wow, that sounds fantastic. Why wouldn't I not want to read the Bible theologically? But then I thought about it and I thought, well, what's the other way to read the Bible? I mean, how would you, if you're somebody who, again, you believe in God and you believe that the Bible is the way that you understand who God is and your relationship with God, how do you read the Bible other than theologically? I guess that was my question. I mean, what's everybody else doing that this article is going to tell them what to stop or how to not do it that way? So let's look at the article, and this is just, we're not going to go through the whole thing because it's a rather long, it's not that long, but we don't need to go through the whole thing. But I'll leave a link to it, and I encourage you to read it for yourself because I don't want to mislead people. You want to have your own ideas. But let's just start at the beginning of the chapter. It says, to read the Bible, quote unquote, theologically means to read the Bible with a focus on God, meaning his being, his character, his words, and his works, his purpose, his presence, his power, his promises, and precepts. The Bible can be read from different standpoints and with different centers of interest, but this article seeks to explain how to read it theologically, okay? So now there's the setup. And I say setup, I don't mean that again in a bad way. I'm simply saying that's apparently what the article is supposed to tell you. One of the things that I think it's important to note, and something that I kind of always pick on, this is a brilliantly written article. I don't know who wrote it, but it's a very, very skilled writer. Because right here in that first character, where it says his words and his works, that's an example of alliteration. I think that's what you call it, alliteration. Where you find words that begin with the same beginning letter, and when you read it, it kind of rolls off, I want to say poetically, but it's a pleasant way to hear words. And it goes on to say his purpose, his presence, his power, his promises, and precepts. So right away, we're dealing with somebody who's a very skilled writer. That's a very well-written paragraph, I think. But the idea behind it is, when I read this paragraph, I'm going to learn how to read the Bible theologically, as opposed to whatever else I've been doing. I would imagine, I guess. So it goes on to say, in this first paragraph, it says the quest for God, or first section, I guess it is. Reading the scripture theologically starts by acknowledging these truths. 1, the Bible is a God-given guide to sinners for their salvation and for the life of grateful godliness to which salvation calls them. The Bible is equally the church's handbook for worship and service. It is divinely inspired. It is a divinely inspired unity of narrative and associated admonition, a kind of running commentary on the progress of God's kingdom plan up to the establishing of a world-embracing, witnessing, suffering church in the decades following Christ's ascension and the Pentecost outpouring of the Spirit, and the incarnate Son of God himself, Jesus the Christ, crucified, risen, glorified, ministering, and coming again, is the Bible's central focus, while the activities of God's covenant people, both before and after Christ's appearing, make up its ongoing story. Now, again, there's a lot there, okay? But I would call myself, I wouldn't be an advanced Bible guy, right? There's a lot of in the Bible that I don't know about. Some parts I haven't even read, I'll be honest. I've skipped over a couple of those parts in Deuteronomy and Numbers. Revelation, I don't get. So my point is, I'm no advanced Bible guy, okay? But there's nothing in those paragraphs, in those 4 things that I didn't already, I don't want to say no, but there's nothing in there where I read and I go, wow, I didn't know that. That's a big surprise, right? I didn't know that it's a divinely inspired, unity narrative, or that the Bible is equally the church's handbook for worship and service. None of these things here, I thought, wow, I didn't know that. As a matter of fact, I'm not sure who has been, I don't know, a believer in God for, I don't know, more than a couple of months, maybe a year, who, I don't know, were at least familiar with these ideas. So I thought, well, maybe later on in the article, I'll hear something that maybe is new to me. And just finishing up that part, it says the theological reading follows these leads as it's pursued theocentrically, okay? That's another word that's kind of tossed in here. I have to do this part again. And so just to finish up this part, it says, just under those 4 topics, it says, theological reading follows these leads and is pursued theocentrically. Okay. Looking and listening for God throughout with the controlling purpose and discerning, the controlling purpose of discerning him with maximum clarity through his own testimony to his will, works, and ways. Again, more alliteration there. It's, again, beautiful writing. Such reading is pursued prayerfully, according to Martin Luther's observation that the first thing one needs to become a theologian through Bible reading is prayer for the illumination and the help of the Holy Spirit, and prayerful theological Bible reading will be pursued in light of three future guiding principles as follows. Okay. Again, very beautiful writing. The Martin Luther thing I didn't know about, but again, at least at this point, and this is just me, I'm no biblical giant by any stretch of the imagination. There's nothing that I haven't heard of before, or at least that I look at and I go, wow, that's a whole new concept to me for reading the Bible. But again, this is just the beginning. Maybe there's something down later on. The Bible's God language is analogical. Okay. Today's fashion is to call it metaphorical, which is not wrong, but analogical is the term that makes clearest the key point. The difference involved when everyday words, nouns, verbs, adjectives are used of God. Language is God's gift for personal communication between humans and between God and humans. But when God speaks of himself, or when people speak to him or about him, the definitions, connotations, implications, valuations, and range of meaning in each case must be adjusted in light of the differences between him and his creation. God is infinite and flawless. People are finite and flawed. So what it seems like it's saying there is simply that you have to read the Bible in its context, meaning there are certain things that are poetic writing. Everything's not everything's not literal in the Bible. Sometimes it's telling a story. Sometimes there's a metaphor going on. There's a lot of different styles of writing in the Bible. And that's simply all it's saying there. And again, I'm not sure that there's anything that anybody who's been reading the Bible for a regular amount of time, not that long, wouldn't understand. So I don't want to go through the whole article because it's quite a long article. And so while I don't find a problem with the article itself as far as it being something devious or evil, I think it's a fantastic, well-written article. Again, the person who wrote this is very skillful, but I don't know anything different than I did when I started. And it starts out with these ideas of, again, reading the Bible theologically, theocentrically. And while I kind of think I know what they mean, I don't know how that's different than anything that I've always been doing or anybody that I know has already been doing. And so when those kinds of things happen, again, while I don't think it's anything bad or anything negative, they're just doing business. The question is, well, why would they write this kind of an article? And it seems to me, one of the things that happens is if you have a business website, you can hire people who are skilled at writing articles for these kinds of things. And they'll either have background knowledge in your area already, or they'll research that area, and then they'll write you this really wonderful article to help sell that product. This might be what's going on here. It's just a really nice, well-written article with, nice, profound, pious-sounding words like theological and theocentric. That might draw a lot of people in to go, wow, I want to read this book that's going to help me do these things. But it may be that you were just doing those things all the time. Now, again, I don't have a problem with that. It's a business world, and Olive Tree has the right, and I think the responsibility to sell as much as they can. I'm just simply saying this is different than what I had expected. I expected as I started out to read the article that I would learn something, and I just didn't. Oftentimes that's going to happen. And while this I think is innocuous, what we're going to be looking at in the future is some things that are not so innocuous. As a matter of fact, I think they're downright evil. Many people have really harnessed these skills. They've gone to school, they've studied them, they teach them to other people, and they figured out ways to dislodge you from one, your regular God-given sense-making abilities, or to distract you to looking over here while they're doing something over here. And again, while this is, I think, harmless, sometimes they're incredibly harmful. And this, for me, is just practice. When I'm reading stuff and listening stuff, I'm always kind of in the back of my head going, okay, where am I going? What does this mean? Did they clearly define that word? Is that exactly what that means? Are they equivocating? All those kinds of things are going through my head as I'm listening to somebody talk. And when those things start to come up, that's when I start to think about, okay, what are they really trying to get at? Or how would I correct this if I was going to give this? What other information am I going to have to dig for if I really want to find out about this topic? Because I don't know that I'm going to get the straight skinny from the person who's telling me. That's really what this is all about. It's just practice that you can use to kind of harness your skills. Because once you start seeing these things and start looking for them, it's less likely that someone's going to catch you with one of these kinds of tricks. And really what they are just tricks. They're mental games that you can use. Neuroscience talks about these kinds of things, inattentive blindness, the false premise. Those are kind of things that are used all the time in these kinds of exchanges to kind of get your brain over here while they're doing something over here. Sometimes it's harmless like this, but I think oftentimes it isn't. So I think I'm repeating myself again. So that's enough. Hey, thanks for tuning into Uncolored. I appreciate your guys' support. Please, again, let me know, like, subscribe, and all those things, and comment in at the bottom. And next week, we're going to do something just a little bit different than this. But thanks for tuning in. I'm Kevin Metcalf. I've talked enough. I'm out of here. All right, that's it.